Well, good morning, all. We're very thrilled to have Smooth Progressions with us this morning to inspire us. It's beautiful. It's wonderful to have you here. And if they're not really here, they lose out, right? So thank you for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here. We're glad to have as our speaker this morning Assistant Chaplain Adam Miller-Stubbendick, who has been here just since early August. So he's very new, but he's already made a huge contribution to our work here in the Lumen Pavilion in the Truett Center and on campus. So we're really thrilled to have him. He comes from us most immediately from New York, from Nebraska. You can read, he's actually from Nebraska. His wife Jordan's here with us this morning, and we're glad to have her here over from Duke. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam, who's going to speak to us today on stretching.
So a couple of days ago, I wore a long-sleeve shirt that I hadn't touched since last winter. Part of the cuff area is elastic. When I put the shirt on, I discovered not only that I hadn't worn it since last winter, but that the shirt also probably hadn't been washed since my last wearing. I knew this because the cuffs were all stretched out. Sometimes our clothes, other parts of ourselves, get all stretched out. It's convenient that when I wash this particular shirt with the cuffs all stretched out, the cuffs will return to their original shape. Life, however, from my experience, doesn't quite work out that way. I consider myself fortunate in that I've had moment after moment in life that has stretched me and pulled me in a whole bunch of different directions. And as my life is stretched out, it never springs back to the form that it was in before it was stretched. Occasionally, I don't like that I don't return to my former shape. But by and large, being stretched out of shape has informed who I am and shaped me for the better. The theme this year at Numen Lumen is reconciling lives, personal stories in the search for multi-faith understanding. As I've really had to reflect on this theme in preparation for this morning's talk with you all, I had a realization. I think the theme works well for us all as a community here at Elon, as collectively here in this place, we are on a search for multi-faith understanding. However, I have to say that I'm not sure that early on in my exposure to other faiths, I was on any type of search. In all honesty, in my early faith life, it wasn't the type of faith that wanted exposure to those who were different. I was not on a search for multi-faith understanding. Life, however, has a way of intervening, or to put it another way this morning, life has a way of stretching us beyond where we initially want to go or think is even possible. Today, as part of my self-understanding, I say to others that I believe that had I been born in a different part of the world or into a different family, I'd be a faithful adherent of another faith tradition than my own. You see, I was born in a Lutheran Christian household with two Lutheran Christian parents who raised me in this tradition. I'm also convinced that had I been raised in a Hindu or Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or secular household, I would be an adherent of that particular worldview. Who knows, perhaps I'd still be standing here with you all this morning and I'd be sharing that story with you. But I want to tell you a bit more about my story of being stretched towards, as opposed to intentionally searching for a multi-faith understanding. To get to the parts of my story that include those of other faith backgrounds influencing and deepening who I am, I think you first need to hear a story about how I learned that my perspective could positively change about anything at all. When I began my junior year of college, I was a pretty certain person. I thought I had everything figured out and had a whole lot of the answers that I needed for life. And then I met a girl I wanted to impress. She and I remain friends even today, although we haven't talked or seen one another for quite some time now. I'm not sure she even knows the influence that she had and continues to have on my self-understanding. Anyway, in wanting to get to know her more, I learned that her perspective on the world was more varied than mine. While also a Christian, she viewed God as not being masculine, but rather beyond gender, and she wouldn't use masculine pronouns for God. She also spent her days in the women's center on campus, and one night invited me along to a drag show. This experience, this personal story, is the beginning of my seeing those different than me as less of a threat and more of a curiosity, a fascination. The next thing I knew, a year and a half later, I wrote an undergraduate thesis about language and God, about how we need a whole lot of different images and metaphors from people from all sorts of perspectives in order to have a more robust perspective of who God is. My perception about God and faith and accepted worldview was still, however, almost exclusively limited to Christianity. Yet so much of my ever-widening perspectives about faith and worldview can be traced back to my wanting to know more about another person, to impress her. Not even knowing it, she taught me about being open to difference. Then I moved to Chicago for graduate school. And at the same time that I arrived, the school was beginning a program to partner with an institution in Turkey, inviting Muslim students to study alongside of us at a seminary that primarily trained Lutheran Christian leaders. And one of those students from Turkey, Mehmet, and I were assigned to be roommates. He and I didn't spend that much time together right away in that first semester, but then my family came to visit. My dad, my mom, my sister, and my 5-month-old nephew came to visit me in Chicago, and Mehmet insisted that he have tea and Turkish sweets one night for my family while they were there. He borrowed additional cookware and glass cups for tea and shared the story of his family with my family. I learned that he missed his siblings and their children through the ways that his face light up when he saw my nephew and held my nephew. All of a sudden, we were more than simply two people thrown together by circumstance. We were bound together by common humanity because Mehmet insisted on sharing tea with my family. He taught me about hospitality and continued my being stretched out of my former shape. Something sparked me in those couple of years in Chicago, and I had the opportunity to spend a year immersed in another culture in Cairo, Egypt. During this year, I heard the call to prayer cry out from all over this city of 1,000 minarets. I saw faithful Muslims living out their everyday lives in a whole variety of ways, praying, fasting, feasting, going to work and school, taking care of their families, and basically doing all the things that we all do as human beings. I learned about some multiplicity within Islam, how Muslims are as various in the particularities of their expression of faith as I was different from my Christian neighbors, both back home in America and in Egypt. And I really, really got to know people from other faith backgrounds as human beings, as friends, as stretching partners for the first time. I returned to Chicago for a final year of study, stretched and changed and trying to make sense of it all. After that year, I was ordained as a Lutheran clergy person and began trying to serve in Lutheran congregations and trying to return home to where I began as a Lutheran Christian. I learned that I didn't fit that metaphorical piece of clothing that I thought was a huge part of my identity in the same way that it used to fit and in the ways that it fits for so many people. I still consider myself a Lutheran Christian, but my perspective continues to stretch and change. As a clergy person, it was hard to live in and try to lead communities of people whose perspectives on what it meant to be a faithful person and equal before God was so different than mine was now. So after 5 years trying to do this in Lutheran congregations in a few places, and struggling with this disconnect between my perspective and those I spent my days with, I came here to Elon in August. And even as I'm being stretched and pulled in ways beyond imagine as we continue to live into being a multi-faith community, it feels really good to be stretched in these type of ways again. My personal stories on the search for multi-faith understanding continue here at Elon in this environment of stimulating thought and practice, where I'm stretched to articulate my personal views and the views of others so that all voices can be heard and respected, and these multiple worldviews can all be seen as valid, as real expressions of people trying to make meaning in life. This morning I began by telling you about a shirt stretched out of shape. Stretching is a negative thing from this perspective, which was the perspective I used to have around faiths and worldviews different than my own. If the shirt loses its shape, then perhaps it might lose its usefulness. I want to conclude by thinking about stretching in another way, with a more positive light. The muscles in our bodies function best when they can be stretched and constrict freely. But this flexibility takes a lot of intentional effort and frequent use. This is the type of stretching that I now see as a great metaphor for our rootedness in our own worldviews and our extending ourselves out to better understand others' perspectives. I continually work on my multi-faith flexibility. I think this is a great place for us all to do this work together. We need one another to become more flexible. We'll grow, we'll change, and we'll learn from one another. So I leave you today with this question. Does the prospect of multi-faith understanding stretch you out of shape? Or does living in a multi-faith world stretch you into greater awareness of yourself and others? Either way, you are being stretched.
Well, I noticed that nobody clapped about being stretched. So we may feel that it may feel like a bit of a threat, but that is what we're here to do for each other and for you. We offer programs that we hope stretch us in the best of ways. So we invite you to play along and to enjoy the stretch and to be part of the movements. You'll notice on your leaflet there are many announcements of exciting things that are going on, many of which will stretch us and will grow us. I want especially to remind you of the informational meetings about a multi-faith service trip to Morocco upcoming for spring break, and those are next week. I believe that's Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So we hope that some of you will come back and check out that opportunity. And there are many other opportunities that are listed here that we hope you'll come back for. I want to thank Adam for sharing some of his journey with us this morning. And those of you who know Adam know that he is involved in helping our students and our program grow and helping us to stretch ourselves here in this place. So we thank you, Adam, for your sharing this morning. And then we'll invite Smooth Progressions back up for the final piece of music. And thank you all very much for being with us. At the conclusion of the music, come on out to the main lobby and have coffee and donuts with us.
Hi, Progressions. Thank you so much for having us this morning. We actually recorded our first music video last night, and we were so sleepy that we practiced the wrong song. So the program is following me. This is actually a matchup without you and with or without you. Oh, and we do have a concert on November 9th in Whitby, 7:30. It's pre-admission if you want to buy tickets again. This is our first time before with new guys. We're really excited.